Lots of weather going on across the U.S. and in parts of the tropics. We have excessive heat that continues across much of the middle of the country. Not too shabby in the west. There's some activity left over from Tropical Storm Harold, that's moved into the southwestern part of the United States. We've got showers and some thunderstorms and higher humidity coming for later Thursday and especially Thursday night into Friday morning. And Tropical Storm Franklin, which is emerging from the Dominican Republic and heading into the Atlantic and is forecast to become a hurricane. So we will talk about that and much more tonight on the Joe and Joe Weather Show, brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York. Mulch, topsoil, sand. This winter it's salt and it's hurricane season, so make sure you've got everything you need just in case. 631-756-1125. Can't find better prices anywhere. I challenge you, and the website is
OmniTrueValue.com.
Tempest by Weatherflow. Get the revolutionary Tempest weather system and join the fastest growing observing weather network on the planet. The link is pinned to the top of the chat board. It's also on the descriptor to this video. And if you purchase this or anything else from the Tempest Weatherflow website, just be sure to use the I Want a Weather Station coupon code, because if you do, you get
10% off, Joe.
like a beautiful speaking voice. The inflections drop at the right time and they rise at the right time. It's all good.
Yes, yes.
All right, here we are. So, welcome to everybody on the chat board. Just a quick announcement. So tomorrow night, I got stuff to do. So there's no show tomorrow night. And there will be a show Sunday night, probably at 7:35 p.m. Eastern Time. So just want to let you know, no show tomorrow night, and then a show on Sunday at 7:35. And we are on Sunday through Thursdays at 7:35 p.m. We've changed the Sunday from a morning show to an evening show. For those of you lurking in the background, subscribe to my YouTube channel and hit the notifications and turn them on, because this way you won't miss us. There are people that miss us. There are definitely people that won't miss us. So what do you make of tomorrow night with this warm front, cold front thing that's coming through? Because I've noticed on some of the models, especially, I noticed it this morning and I've seen more of it this afternoon. They seem to be showing what could be a fairly decent area of rain that is going to fall out of this.
Well, I think we'll probably get through the day tomorrow. Well, actually, I think we'll get through the night tonight without any precipitation. The assessment here from this forecaster is that tomorrow, whatever precip we're going to see is probably going to be very spotty and very light. So I wouldn't get too, hyped up if you're going to be doing anything tomorrow or even late tomorrow. Whatever we see is going to be, brief, again, very spotty, very light. It's not going to be, I think, Joe, until later tomorrow night. I mean, there'll be a few showers tomorrow night, tomorrow evening, but as you are alluding to, once we get into the after midnight hours and on into the early part of the day on Friday, we'll see some heavier showers, and there may be some rumbles of thunder as well. Remember, yesterday I said that if you just go by sheer extrapolation, that the Storm Prediction Center probably would put our area in a marginal risk of severe weather for Friday, but it turns out that most of that marginal risk area has now been shunted or shifted more to the south of the New York City metropolitan area. Not to say that we might not see thunderstorms here, again, late tomorrow night and early on Friday morning, but the main dose of heavy-duty showers and storms appears to be hitting to the south of New York City. And while, places, let's say in central and southern New Jersey, for example, might pick up, 1, maybe even 2 inches of rain, I think areas from New York on north, up here in the Hudson Valley, will probably get, I don't know, a quarter of an inch, a half an inch, maybe a little more, but nothing at least comparable to what we have seen in other scenarios where in recent weeks we've had warm frontal passages and seen some really hefty rain amounts, like an inch and a half, 2, 3 inches. It doesn't look like quite that way for this impending round of precipitation. And one thing about tomorrow and especially Friday, we're certainly going to notice the big bump upwards in dew points. Tomorrow, probably in the probably be in the 60s tomorrow. Today, amazingly, Joe, you normally think that up here in the Hudson Valley, we would have the drier and less humid conditions as opposed to down across Long Island and New York City. Turns out that New York City today had dew points in the upper and middle 40s. Same holds true for portions of western Long Island. Up here, yeah, it was wonderful, but we never really dropped down below 50 in terms of a dew point temperature. I mean, White Plains, Poughkeepsie, Newburgh, we're somewhere in the 50 to 52 degree range. But New York City, I mean, I did a double take. New York City, Central Park, 46, 47 dew point. It was drier down south as opposed to up here. It was a wonderful day. But now tomorrow, 60s probably, dew points for everybody. And on Friday, quite possibly coming close to 70 on the dew points, especially early in the day. Friday looks like a day, Joe, I think where we're going to see the best chance of precip in the morning. But by the afternoon, just some lingering or leftover hit or miss showers. And that should be pretty much it for the day on Friday.
I'm a little more optimistic on the weekend. I think Sunday looks okay. Saturday might still be a touch iffy, but anything that happens on Saturday, I thought if there's something pops up, that's what it'll be. But Sunday doesn't look like there's much of anything going on. We'll be right in the throes of another dry high, so that'll be great. Meanwhile, I was 90 today for the 5th time this summer. It was hot today. I mean, it was hot. Dew points up around 70. It was humid, a bit of uncomfortable. This morning was 68 with fog. But it still feels cool until you get to the rays of the sun. It's one thing here in the mornings, particularly for me when I'm in the mountains, when I'm near my house in the mountains and in the wooded area, it actually stays relatively comfortable temperature-wise until around lunchtime or so. And then after that, because the sun, I got mountains blocking sunlight, so it takes a little while, and then the trees offer a nice amount of shade, but it quickly makes up for it. I see my biggest temperature jumps usually after 11 a.m. So anyhow.
So now I'm looking at the Moss temperature projections for Saturday, and I'm seeing temperatures like 99 and 101 for Atlanta.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a little extreme. I mean, that's about as hot as I've seen down there in quite some time. So
yeah, that'll probably be 91 or 2 for me for in town, and maybe I'll get to 90 or 88, 89, something like that. I'll just have to bear it.
I mean, it's quite it's eye popping to see some of these readings. I don't know what exactly. I'm looking at a map here, and I'm seeing a projection like right on the Georgia-South Carolina line. I don't know what city that might be or town that might be. 103 projected for Saturday afternoon.
Well, that could be if it's on the North Carolina side. It could be Anderson, North Carolina.
South Carolina, I should
say.
I'm
sorry. It could be Anderson, South Carolina. You said it right. I said it wrong. That might be Anderson, because that's only about 2 hours from me, and I'm not that far from the South. I'm near all these state borders. I'm near the South Carolina border. I'm near the North Carolina border. I'm only 20 miles from the North Carolina border. I'm about 25 miles from the Tennessee border. As the crow flies, probably about 30 or so miles from the South Carolina border, maybe a little bit more. So I get all of that. I'm in that quadrangle.
And I'm looking here, Joe, at temperatures. I'm looking at Jacksonville, 100. Tallahassee, 103. Mobile, Alabama, 100. This is all for Saturday now.
Yeah.
And it's crazy. I'm trying to, the Rolodex in my head, which was a lot fresher and a lot faster, and I'm sure the same holds true for you in terms of weather information. I'm reeling through this. I'm trying to remember the last time I saw numbers like this down in the quote deep South. Now my daughter, get this now, my daughter is going to visit a friend in Orlando, and she's leaving from Westchester County Airport on midday on Saturday. And I said, "You're crazy. Why would you?" I mean, well, obviously when she made the reservations and she made the arrangements, She didn't know, but I said, I just want to let you know that if you literally would have to be on the east coast of Florida, the whole temperature's down to like 90 or 91. Orlando, which is like 40 or 50 miles inland,
Oh yeah, yeah,
probably going to see temperatures like 96, 97 on Saturday afternoon. Ouch.
yeah. That's not fun. Look at all
No.
the states though that all these states here that are under excessive heat warnings. And there's a lot of them. One of the things that also to add with what's going on in the South is the fact that it's not only hot, but it's suddenly gotten very dry. I mean, I can't remember now when the last time it rained here. It's got to be going on 9 or 10 days. And the thing is, um, eh, things dry up very quickly. I mean, the sun really, it's a clay soil. Most of North Georgia's clay soil, so it tends to hold moisture a little bit better. But nonetheless, the ground gets almost like cement when it's like this. So if you wanted to do yard work even in the coolest part of the day, uh, you can't even get the shovel to go get into the ground. So uh, it's been very little in the way of thunderstorm activity. Meanwhile, again, all of this area here, from the plains east into the Ohio Valley, this is for tomorrow, where we have the heat advisories and excessive heat and so on, particularly in Ohio and West Virginia. We're seeing, let's see, I got to just get my colors straight. So the purple is an excessive heat warning. The red is an excessive heat watch. Here's the thing. I mean, that red to me looks far more serious than the purple. So why not have the purple be the excessive heat watch and the red be the excessive heat warning? Wouldn't that make more sense?
It would, just to let it stand out or jump out at you.
Yeah, because I was getting confused. It's like that's where all the hot air. So why is it dark red there? And then, then I just looked at the legend. We've got just a couple of areas where we've got some flood watches up. Northwest PA, Northeast Ohio, also in Southwest Texas, parts of New Mexico, and what's going on in Southwest Texas and parts of New Mexico is all the leftover stuff from Tropical Storm Harold that made landfall in South Texas yesterday. Corpus Christi had gusts of 60 to 70 miles an hour when it came ashore, so they actually got a fair amount of wind with this. Otherwise, not much in the way of watches and warnings, and on the surface map late this afternoon, as I'm looking at the Northeast with temperatures in the 70s and dew points in the 50s, and as you pointed out, upper 40 dew points. That looks like it may have been. Oh, you know what? I'm seeing I'm seeing a dew point of 43 at a station somewhere in Virginia. It must be on some mountain or something. Northwest of Washington, D.C. It must be on some elevated area there. But the dew points were down in the 50s, clear down into North Carolina today. Dew points low 60s at South Carolina, even some 50 dew points at South Carolina. But then you get further south, you start to get into Georgia, you start to see the 70 dew points. And then, of course, the heat just continues. 100-degree readings all over the place today in Kansas, in Oklahoma, in Arkansas, 90s in Missouri and in Illinois, Wisconsin, Iowa. You really have to jump southern Minnesota. You jump up on the other side of the stationary boundary. It's a lot cooler. It's in the mid 60s and low 70s north of that frontal boundary. But there's far
Yeah, but
more.
the thing that knocked me out today was the fact that, I said, oh, we spent the a good part of the day with our kids at the Dutchess County Fair, and I said, boy, this is probably the nicest day in terms of dew points, in terms of humidity. And when I got home, the first thing I did was check the dew points, and I said, well, that makes sense, 50, 52, 53. But, the thing that blew me away was the fact that New York and parts of Long Island, which you would expect to be a little bit higher
Right.
normally, was actually in the lower in the 40s, and that was quite. And now you're telling me that a place down in Virginia was in the low 40s. It's amazing.
Might have been where maybe the center of the high moved right over New York City, because at 21Z, let me just take a look, just to satisfy my curiosity. I mean, yeah, I mean the center of the high was fairly close to New York City. Now it's well to the east, southeast of Nantucket. Meanwhile, with what's left of Harold, if looking at the wind barbs here, there is actually still a little closed circulation there. in West Texas with that low that is moving to the northwest. Not much. If I see a 20 knot, a couple of 20 knot winds, but mostly 15, 10, 15, couple of 20 knot winds. But still, still an intact center of some sort is there. And not much happening in the west. It actually is fairly reasonable in Arizona for this time of year and also up through the west coast. Not particularly hot, which is good. And on the satellite loop tonight, on the lower right, you see Tropical Storm Franklin, which is now the center is moving off the coast of the Dominican Republic. They have already cleared the entire coastline. And it's got that look to it, the signature on the satellite, that sort of circular look of a cyclone. So it doesn't appear as if the mountains have done a whole lot of damage to the structure of this. We'll see what it does as it clears that coastline and moves a little bit further to the north. And you can also see the moisture in the southwest from Harold. Most of it now is shifted into New Mexico and Arizona. We've got some lightning strikes going on there, as well as in parts of Utah and even up as far north as Wyoming. And we've got some lightning strikes that are moving southeastward from Michigan into northeast Ohio, Joe, and western Pennsylvania. And on the radar, it's actually, you've got a fairly large area of heavy rain and some thunderstorms. It's not that far away. The area has reached up to central Pennsylvania, very close to Williamsport. It's west of Harrisburg, but it's in Altoona. But it's moving south-southeast, which is an odd motion, but it's coming around the periphery of the upper high. And that's why you're not seeing this move straight east or even southeast. I'll give you southeast, but it's actually moving south-southeast. And it's probably going to settle down in parts of West Virginia, maybe getting into northern Virginia and western Maryland. But this is the prelude to what will probably happen Thursday night and Friday. We just don't have anything to worry about this tonight into tomorrow morning for eastern PA and to southern New England.
I mean, as ominous as that radar that you had on the screen just moments ago looks. And you say to yourself, "Oh my goodness! Well, that means that tomorrow we're going to have, quite a bit of wet weather here." But again, based upon the short-term models, whatever we see tomorrow is going to be, spotty, light, few, far between. So we're going to have to wait until after dark tomorrow to get into the range of heavier showers and again possible thunderstorms. By the way, it would not be surprising if maybe a renegade shower were to slip into the immediate New York area in time for tomorrow morning's morning commute. But if it does, it ain't going to last very long, and it's not going to amount to anything. It's really the 24 hours later, the Friday morning commute to work will be far more problematic because we will have already gone through some heavier rain and showers, possible thunderstorms that may still linger into the morning commute on Friday. So no problems tomorrow morning, but Friday morning, there may be some problems.
Meanwhile, you look at the radar, you have that in Pennsylvania, Ohio, and coming out of southeastern Michigan. You have the area down in New Mexico with what's left of Harold. And you've got a few speckles of showers up in North Dakota into Minnesota. And the rest of the radar is unusually quiet for the 23rd of August. The Storm Prediction Center has actually a severe thunderstorm watch has gone up. Let me just give this a refresh real quick. A severe thunderstorm watch has gone up for parts of northwestern North Dakota, where there's a marginal to slight risk that extends into northwestern Minnesota. We don't have any watches in that slight risk area, that southeastern Michigan into Ohio and western Pennsylvania, and I don't see anything on the mesoscale discussion which indicates that they're going to do something with that. So that's not going to be a problem. Tomorrow, as we look, we've got in the east a marginal risk, central and western PA down to West Virginia, Ohio, northern Indiana into northern Illinois and southern Michigan, and another area of marginal risk up in North Dakota. Tornado risks tomorrow, 2% in southeastern Michigan, across northern Ohio into a small portion of western PA. And then, as Joe pointed out, and I think there's a chance, by the way, that they might nudge this up a little bit for the Friday to Saturday time. Well, the thing is, this is for Friday and Saturday daytime. So I guess we should look at tomorrow's, because if we're talking about something that's going to be overnight into Friday morning, maybe they'll nudge this for tomorrow a little bit further to the east, or not. They might, but certainly I think it's a possibility. And then Friday during the daytime, the marginal risk is southernmost New Jersey after 8 a.m., the Delaware, the Delmarva Peninsula, all of Maryland, West Virginia, most of Kentucky, all of Virginia, northern North Carolina, and a small portion of northeastern Tennessee. Now, between we've got potential for 2 rain events. The one tomorrow night into Friday morning, and then probably another one on Tuesday with another weather front that's going to be coming through as Franklin moves up the East Coast offshore. So it's kind of providing the alleyway, except that Franklin's going to be way out. But between the two of them, a pretty generous area of at least 1.5 inches and pockets of 2.5 inches plus from eastern Ohio across Pennsylvania, New Jersey, down into Maryland and Delaware, and then northeast up into New England, except for far northern New England. They've got patches of heavier rains indicated in central and southern New Hampshire and western and central Massachusetts and northwest Connecticut. Also, southeast Virginia down into South Carolina and some heavier rains in North Carolina and eastern North Carolina and southeastern North Carolina of several inches there, and some rain in the central Rockies of anywhere from in the light blue about 1 inch to some 2 and 3 inch amounts. It's going to rain in Denver. It doesn't rain a lot out there. Most of it's water equivalent from snow for them most of the time. So it's a little unusual for them to get big rains during the summer season. So let's.
Denver's like so many other places this year. Denver has had some very weird
things are happening. Weird things have been happening.
What was that? Was that the old Red Buttons hit song from the 50s? Strange things are happening.
Yeah. Well, here's Franklin, and it looks to me like the whole center is now offshore as it moves northward, and you see that feathering going on. There's also still a little bit of shear, which is probably going to inhibit development to an extent, but it's not going to stop it because the conditions are certainly okay, favorable for some strengthening. The shear might slow it down at least initially until an upper low to the north of it and a trough to the north of it pulls out, which it's going to do. And I think this is getting the look that's kind of telling you that this is going to go to a hurricane.
Yeah, and it, as we've been saying for the last couple of days, this system, Franklin, is going to just continue to slowly but surely rev up. And folks who are in the vicinity of the storm by the middle of next week, Bermuda, I don't know what it is. Bermuda always seems to find itself. I mean, they're out in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. Well, not in the middle, but I mean, they always seem to come either threateningly close or right over Bermuda. And Bermuda may not get a direct hit from this, but they certainly are going to be close enough to get some rather adverse effects probably from that storm. You get a 105 mile per hour hurricane, as is suggested for next week. So they'll have to watch this very carefully. And for us, I mean, a storm system of that magnitude, that close to the eastern seaboard, I'm sure we're going to be seeing statements from Weather Service offices almost up and down the eastern seaboard regarding heavy swells and possible rip currents and undertow, all due to the indirect effects of Franklin during the middle part of next week.
The 8 o'clock advisory from our friends at the National Hurricane Center, 20.6, 70.5, so it's back out over the water. Top winds are 40 miles an hour, moving north-northeast to 13. And you see the forecast track is for a turn to the northeast or east northeast at some point, but then it turns forecast to turn sharply northward and then northwestward. So on this track, it'll pass west of Bermuda. So Bermuda's kind of on the edge with this. But we'll have to see what it develops into when it gets further north, because a lot of times they like to expand in terms of their size. And I'll be curious, kind of curious to see, if this is going to be one of those storms where the area of gales is larger than average. But it passes well east of the Carolinas. And when you look at the upper air pattern, which we will do right now, let's see. Okay, so there's your ridge. I'm just going back to Tuesday. You see the big upper high. It's starting to weaken some in the middle of the country. The little circle that you see north of the Dominican Republic is what represents Franklin. You've got this fairly deep trough off the east coast that extends from way up in Greenland, not Greenland, I'm sorry, from northeastern Canada, all the way south of Bermuda. So, you've got westerly winds in the upper atmosphere, not that far away, but as we said, that trough lifts out, and you see it there. Those height lines start to pull northward, and you get a ridge that a very narrow ridge tries to build westward. Now there's another trough that comes into the east, and let me just get rid of that. So we've got this other trough now that's coming into the east for Friday, and it's going to linger into Saturday before it moves off. And you see there's a cutoff low there in northern Maine. Franklin starts to turn northward at this point. That trough lifts out, and there's another short wave, another trough right there in Minnesota that's coming southeastward. Now, again, if that trough were to dig southward, and this thing were to lift out faster, that would have been an opportunity for Franklin to probably go northwest for a rather long time, and then turn northward and do something to New England or Long Island or whatever again. But that's not going to happen because that trough's going to progress, and it just at that point Franklin is so far north that it's going to get caught by that trough as it swings eastward, and you see it turns northeastward, actually passes south of Nova Scotia and clips eastern Newfoundland on this run next sometime late next Wednesday as it runs away to the northeast south of Greenland. I mean, there's still an identifiable feature there. And meanwhile, there's this other deep trough that comes into the eastern part of the United States for the second half of next week. And I'm going to switch over to the 0Z run because I'm sorry, the 12Z run, because I find that the upper airs with the 18Z, it's the 18Z run always wants to do the opposite of what the 12Z does in its long range. And yeah, and I think the long range, we've been talking about the fact that we keep getting trough after trough dropping into the east, and the 12Z run pretty much, amplified that idea. Here's another one for going into the Labor Day weekend, where the strongest part of that trough is to our north. But then here's another one that drops down into Minnesota. You get a bridge that briefly builds along the east coast around Labor Day, and then yet another, and this trough is monstrous by the time we get to the end of the forecast period. And I don't know if that's good, if that's real, because the GFS loves to over-amplify these things. However, I still think the idea of the trough being in the east is the way to go. The other thing I want to point out, Joe, is the fact that the European and the Canadian model, the GFS shows hints of this. But and the other two models, they've been sort of coming and going with this idea. There is a gyre of moisture that's in the northwest that covers Central America, and I'm just rolling back. Kind of see that little blue spot there that's on the Yucatan Peninsula. So there's slightly lower than normal pressures there because of the big ridge that's across the south and southwest. Well, the European and the Canadian want to do something with that, and we go back to maybe what the GFS did a few runs ago, where it was trying to make a hurricane in the eastern Gulf and then bringing it into the southeast. The European and the Canadian do that today. Of course, the Canadian wants to shoot it all the way up the coast, whereas the European takes it into North Carolina, and then all of a sudden it just gets ejected eastward because of how the troughs time out. So that might be something to just start to watch in the coming days to see how models handle what's going on down there. It wouldn't shock me if another tropical storm were to come out from the Western Caribbean and move into the Eastern Gulf the way those models have it. But I don't think it's a foregone conclusion at this point, and that would be for next week.
It would be funny if the Canadian was right.
Well, every once
laughing matter there. I
no,
don't want to.
every once in a while the Canadian model does its thing. And here's the surface on the European, and you can see it here. I mean, it's got some kind of something develops in the Northwest Caribbean, comes out through the Yucatan Channel and then into the Eastern Gulf, and it strengthens it to a hurricane, bringing it into the Florida along the Big Bend of Florida. Then it gets to South Carolina and then goes straight east. You see hints of it on the GFS, and of course you see Franklin there. Franklin well east of the Bahamas, passes fairly far west of Bermuda, and then turns northeastward and misses obviously it misses the East Coast. It also misses Nova Scotia. Let's just see if it misses Newfoundland on this one. For our friends in the Canadian Maritime provinces that watch, no, actually on the European, it takes it out east and then it turns northeast and accelerates and goes right smack into Newfoundland.
Now, here's the question, Joe. You're looking obviously at the operational models. What does Mrs. Ensembles say?
Well, apparently the ensembles all the way through seem to be kind of all over the place. But we can take a look and see what Mrs. Ensemble says. Where is she? Oh, there she is. Ensembles. So let's go to the ensemble member MSL plots. So you see Franklin there. They're kind of all over the place. The mean position is way out, but they've some scattered runs of the ensembles that have it much further to the left. And you see them there, actually, not too far off the New Jersey coast and south of Long Island. But they're the outliers. I mean, most of these are either near the mean position or to the northeast of the mean position. And there's some hints on the ensembles. Of course, when you go into the longer range part of the ensembles, you start to get out beyond 120 hours. It starts getting a little messy. But those yellow spots that you see in the Gulf of Mexico would be indicative of some of the members making something in the Gulf. And then, of course, you also see east of the Bahamas, going into the Labor Day weekend, the ensembles have something there. Actually, it kind of stands out. Passing just east of the Bahamas, it looks like they're aiming for the southeast coast of the United States. So, one of the things, Joe, is that sometimes when it's like this far out in the long range, you don't know whether these are separate systems or if it's like, if it's the same. It's really one system that some members have so far to the left and other members have so far to the right. So it gets kind of hard to figure out what the ensembles are telling us when it comes to these cyclones when you start looking at it from the perspective of the long range.
Well, we'll see. What else can I say? We'll see.
We'll see in the fullness of time. So I'm going to bring the HRRR up so we can take a look at what's going on for tonight and tomorrow. You see those showers and storms moving south. Actually, the HRRR has a nice looking line there in southern Pennsylvania going into West Virginia. You see that there tomorrow morning. And as Joe pointed out, there are a couple of renegade downpours on Thursday that are lurking about on and off through the day. And then you go into tomorrow night, and this is where you've got this low that's in northeastern Ohio, and it starts to generate more showers and thunderstorms. But again, it's coming around the periphery of that big ridge, so they're mostly moving southeast. So if you believe the HRRR, there are some showers that get into the Hudson Valley in New England and to Long Island, but the heavier stuff is southern New Jersey, Maryland, western and central PA, and then down into the Delmarva Peninsula into southeastern Virginia. That's the HRRR. The GFS late this afternoon wanted to suddenly kind of extend it a little bit. It's got some stuff further north, as well as the stuff to the south, and this would imply that sometime between um, 1 a.m. and 7 a.m. there'll be some heavy downpours moving through eastern Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and maybe New York City and Long Island before that goes out. And after that, it's just some scattered stuff around in the afternoon into the evening. And again, Saturday doesn't look too bad. I mean, Saturday, I'm going to leave in the chance that something might pop up, but it seems like there's higher probabilities both to the north and to the south. And then Sunday, that nice high, Mr. 1022 high, northeast of Lake Huron, comes in for Sunday, making for a nice day. And then there comes Franklin. Dew points go up on Monday. And here comes the next cold front with showers and storms on Tuesday, late Tuesday night. Then that front goes by and another nice dry high comes in for the second part of next week. So I think unless the GFS is not doing anything in the Gulf of Mexico when they're in the Caribbean, but the European is and the Canadian is. So usually when those two models are in sync, it's a pay attention moment. So we're going to do just that. Frank Scalera, Joe, just hit the tip jar.
I saw that.
Isn't that fabulous?
Thank you.
Yes, thanks for hitting Super Chat, Frank. Most appreciated. Let me just come back full screen here. So we've kind of covered everything that's going on today. Do you have anything else to add?
No, not really. I'm a lot calmer now as opposed to. And thank you, Leon Probitsky, for hitting Super Chats. I see he has Jack LaLanne on his icon tonight.
Is that who that is?
It looks like, well, I mean, it reminds me of Jack LaLanne.
All right, I'm not going to beg for likes tonight.
You remember, of course, if you were a fan of the Jack LaLanne show, one thing that Jack LaLanne always used to have on his show was his dog, his faithful dog.
Yes.
Who would listen to Jack LaLanne. Unlike certain dogs that happen to belong to you and I.
Right. Well, mine listens except when we're in the woods and he gets on deer scent. Because when he gets on deer scent, it's like he's been hypnotized and it's just zoom, gone. So
no, my dog, we have a harness on him, and I decided I'd take him out this evening, and he did his Houdini act. He kind of flicked around, and the harness, came up through his legs or whatever like that, and over his head, and all of a sudden now here he is. He's all by himself, trotting away, even though I'm yelling at him, come back. And what did he do? He goes into the woods. And Joe, I live in a very wooded area, and at one point I lost complete sight of where he went.
Right. Well, look, I'm gonna tell you something. I'm gonna tell you something that someone told me. A friend of mine told me when my dog ran off, and it's really very true. You may not know where he is, but he knows exactly where you are. He may not come right away.
Yeah.
Okay. But there's a lot of truth to that. He knew exactly where you were, even though you didn't know where he was.
Well, we finally did get him back after a half hour of harrowing experience and raising my blood pressure. And my cardiologist likes to know, Mr. Rayo, why is it that you get so stressed out? Well, here's the reason. Here's one of the reasons. The dog goes into the woods and I don't see him, and I'm screaming like an idiot. And but he finally did emerge about a quarter of a mile down the road from where we live, and covered in filth, and probably covered with a good number of ticks, because that woods that he was through.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah. So anyway, the good news is he's back at home. My wife and my daughter spent a goodly amount of time cleaning him off, and Sal Blandino is on.
I know.
Now.
I was just going to tell you, Sal Blandino is on. My God, I'm just stunned. But he likes my haircut. Thank you, Sal. Thank God, the person who my colorist dyes in the gray just perfectly. Just remember, just remember the relationship with your colorist is sacred. All right. You got a good colorist, life is worth living. So just remember
Yes.
that. And Sal, it's really nice to see you on the chat board. I have to give you credit. You've been a lot calmer lately. I do get I see your comments, with like 20 questions as to why this and why that. Um, I'll just tell you the generic answer to all of that is that Sal was asking about how come we can't we never see these long duration heats, or if we do, some backdoor cold front comes down, and then he kind of ran the long litany of things that happen in eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England over the course of a year, where you're thinking it's going to snow and it doesn't, or you get the warm air comes in. How come that happens? Why is every place else? Well, I mean, it happens where you are because I think that's probably the way it's supposed to happen most of the time. So just bear that in mind. If you want it sunny all the time, I'd say go to San Diego, but they just had a tropical storm, so that might not work. But that's just the way it is. Lulu Bell, Joe. Lulu Bell
Lulu Bell 2222.
which is just like Circle 7 2098. Or
Yes.
Plaza 5 9099. Lulu Bell hits super chat. Thank you, and thank you for the first super chat from Lulu Bell. That's what YouTube just told me on my chat board. I get all these messages from
I see that too.
YouTube.
Celebrate the first super chat from Lulu Bell. Thank you.
Yes. We'll play the Notre Dame fight song. Da 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 da. Well, I better not do that because the the bots will pick it up, and then suddenly it's copyrighted or whatever it is.
2222 is one two more than what I was accustomed to seeing. I mean, 222 reminds me of
Room 222.
Room 222.
Yes, which was an old TV show.
Right, from the early 70s, and I had a huge crush show watching that show on Karen Valentine. What would have happened to her?
She got old.
She got old.
You know what's funny? We all have memories of all these actors, right? And when they did these shows back in the even the 80s, 70s, 60s, and 50s, they were so young. And every day I usually read something about an actor or actress that was very young in those times, and I'm reading now that here's so and so is just 91 years old, 89 years old, 95 years old. I mean, it's like, oh my God, really? Because we had
Christopedia and Rich Rothmansky both pointing out Karen Valentine is now 76.
Yeah.
So.
That of course you and I are still 25.
Yeah.
So that's that doesn't apply to us.
Right.
just to be clear. All right. So you know what? The Joe and Joe Weather Show tonight was brought to you by Tempest by Weatherflow. Get the revolutionary Tempest weather system. Join the fastest growing observing weather network on the planet. The link is pinned to the top of the chat board. Give it a look. I mean, it's very easy to install. It's just two pieces and a hub that you plug in, and you monitor it from your mobile device. And what I love about it, by the way, is the fact that it keeps a history of every day. So I mean, I've had mine for a handful of months now, but over time, you don't have to write anything down. It's all saved on their server. So even if something happens to your phone and you have to reinstall everything, you get all that data is kept. So which is a big plus. Anyway. The link is pinned to the top of the chat board. It's also on the descriptor to this video. They've got other stuff, weather stuff there too. Use the coupon code I want a weather station, because if you do, you will get
10% off, Joe.
And Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York, Long Island's largest rock salt source this coming winter. And right now, good place to go to make sure you've got everything you need to make your home or your yard look great. And you've got what you need to get through in case there's a tropical storm or a hurricane. 631-756-1125. Nowhere can you find better prices. The website is
omnitruevalue.com. I just found a picture of Karen Valentine. Supposedly this is the way she looks today. No, please.
Is that a positive or a negative?
Uh, Let me put it this way: I would never have recognized that was Karen Valentine.
Well, when you see
Oh well,
when you look at pictures of yourself from 30 and 40 years ago,
exactly, precisely. It doesn't last forever,
nope,
ladies and
it
gentlemen.
certainly doesn't. Neither
Yes.
does this show. And again, no show tomorrow night, folks, but we'll be back on Sunday, most likely on Sunday at 7:35 p.m. So we will see you then. Nighty night, everybody.
Good night, folks.